Hi all my friends. Wow, what a strange few weeks in politics. And you know something, before now I wasn't that interested, but this has sparked an enthusiasm in me that I can't imagine will die very fast. So Blairite Labour MPs have actually won their appeal before a buddy judge of, you guessed it, Tony Blair. You couldn't make this stuff up if you tried, but it has left thousands very disappointed. I quote George Galloway, Labour MP, he quoted that outgoing NEC have earned themselves the bitter enmity of hundreds and thousands of their own members and contempt. I'd like to get a few things off my own chest. I wonder, can anyone explain to me why Owen Smith, who has only 16% support from the CLPs, thinks that he can be more electable than Jeremy Corbyn, who actually has 84%? And how can any of them think that alienating the very people that would be campaigning for them in a general election would make any one of them, including Owen Smith, more electable? It beggars belief. I just don't get it at all. How does making Labour members, taking Labour members to court really work in Owen Smith's favour? Many people have paid £25 only for that money to be used to stop them from voting. I'm one of the lucky ones who saw something like this coming, but not to this extent. And I joined Labour before January, so and I also joined a union, Unite, simply because that was the one thing that I'd really like to happen, for them all to unite and for us all to come together. But none of this bizarre nonsense which is splitting the party. So we're still going to vote. All those MPs have done is angered and alienated the members further. And I've heard how Tom Watson has actually said that it's dangerous to let the public have a say. One article I've read, a Charles Walker MP has said that we're not there to serve the public, we're representative of our communities. So what does that actually mean? Aren't communities made up of the public, or does that mean parliamentary communities? It's very interesting that these communities that they're talking about, when Owen Smith was asked about equality, his answer was solely representative of the jobs for women in Parliament. Not anything about the housewife or the working woman. In addition to this, when someone talks of a gender equality, it shouldn't be just about men versus women. It's also including the gay community too. But then where Owen Smith considers himself normal for having a wife and children, I see right there he misses out on a large majority of individuals where equality and gender is concerned. I'm now aware that the MPs who have come away from their elected leader, knowing regardless of their continued need to stop members from voting, they're now banding together to make a group labelling themselves Labour Tomorrow, clearly trying to get as far away from the Blairite label as possible. But for most of us, they will never shake that label. And that aside, anyway, I would like to talk about the comments on my previous videos, some of which, of course, were trolls complaining how I look, and boy, did I cop it on one forum where someone launched some horrible bullying thing against me on Facebook. With lots of generic cartoon emoticons, and some complained of how I dressed, and some complained on my Israel-Palestine video about my makeup, and some French man had complained on one of my videos about my terrible looking room. Let me explain that one for a minute. My lovely friend Anne, who comes to stay regularly, while I've been representing in courts. She's an amazing lady who goes to Uganda, and she does amazing work for charity, for the orphans in Africa, taking little things out there. I think I've mentioned her before, but she stays with me often, and she dumped quite a lot of her gear on my bed at the time, and I didn't move it off, so my room looked a bit scruffy and untidy. But you know, my videos are not really about how my room looks or how I look, that it's about what I'm trying to get over and what I'm trying to say to people. I don't sort of have these, you know, everything set up for people to be scouting around my room to find things. But nevertheless, there are lots of comments asking me about the videos and the proper contents, and asking me how I conclude that Jeremy Corbyn is, in my opinion, pro-humanity and Owen Smith anti-humanity. Now, for me, anti-humanity versus pro-humanity speaks for itself. The one who will vote to spend money arming us to the hilt and renewing Trident was all for the Iraq war, votes for students to be in debt for half their lives, voted for austerity and making the poor poorer than they already are. Austerity is a government enforcement usually used following a war. It's not meant to be used to bail out dreadful political decisions made by the Tory government that still governs us today and is imposed upon the poorest people with such a severity that thousands have died or committed suicide. And this is an actual fact. I have volunteered as a Samaritan. My friend works in the food banks. The stories are dire. And these are more than just a little against humanity and its need to survive, I'd say. And that's versus Corbyn's opposition of all these things. And since he is the opposition party to the Tories, his policies are exactly that, oppositional. That's what his job is, surely. This is a result of our bombing out there that people have voted for and Corbyn has voted against. I've seen a lot of articles of small children being pulled out of wreckage in these places that we have been out there, or we have supported the bombing out there. In Syria, children being pulled out of wreckages. So, you know, even though that these people have said it's total waffle what I'm going on about, that comment I do think was unnecessary, because if we didn't go out there causing these wars or trying to stop others from having weapons of mass destruction whilst voting to renew ours and putting ours into further financial difficulty, creating more enemies and more migration, more frightened people frightened for their survival, wouldn't need to be defending themselves, and we wouldn't need to be defending themselves. We would be going out there on peacekeeping missions, and that really is what our military should be about, going out there and making things better. I have seen another article in one newspaper which was really quite amazing, where the soldiers are out there and these ladies that are clearly Muslim ladies taking off their veils for the first time in public and crying and hugging the soldiers. I mean, all these people must be so very confused about what should be allowed and what shouldn't. But having said that, you know, that's what it should all be about. It should be about peacekeeping. It should be about making things better. It should be about working towards disarmament, not, you know, further arming. And Owen Smith even said it himself, which is quite bizarre. You know, things have got worse. Things have clearly got worse, but of course they have. You know, we've been out there doing more harm, and it creates more harm. So anyway, Labour normally was an anti-buy more arms party until Blair turned it into this new Labour. And yes, I am very much anti-war. I'm that because I'm sick and tired of seeing working class and vulnerable people being blamed for any governmental debt. Those on welfare, their money goes right back into the economy. They live hand to mouth. So any of these classes are the least likely to be affecting the economy. They live hand to mouth, and they should be least judged on the state of the economy. I've seen them treated like scum on earth, where these austerity measures have been brought in by the Tories, and it's killed thousands, like I've said. So no, it isn't that those people are a problem. It is that we keep purchasing weapons of mass destruction. We keep spending on the wrong things whilst going to war with people to stop them from having them. And that's a Tory policy. And the Labour Party should be in opposition to that. And that's what Jeremy Corbyn stands for, against these views and values. If we have a constant Conservative government, in the end everyone would eventually be the minority, as they reap from the lowest paid, and those vulnerable and unable to work to ensure higher wages for those more wealthy. This has to continue to come from somewhere. And when it comes from the weakest people, we end up with suicide, depression, and even more unable to work. It's sad when people gain a lot for themselves, they change sides and forget where they come from. We sadly live in this I'm alright Jack society, who only looks after number one. A Labour government looked out for the NHS. The Conservatives would gladly have it privatised. In response to the view on Jeremy Corbyn speaking of non-realities, as I've said in the video, anyone speaking of supporting a greater system that works for all is deemed to be idealistic or deemed idealistic. We seem to have so many leaders nowadays. I mean, in America, I've said before that America just doesn't have a choice, where they've got Trump and Clinton. Both are dividers. Jeremy Corbyn has proven himself to be a peacemaker. Having been involved in the peace talks with the IRA, he has been involved in all these talks to try and bring peace. And I've been in many debates on this and about how bad he is for shedding tears at gravestones with terrorists. You don't get to peace talks with, when you're waving flags and agree with the death of the fallen. But this is how patriotism causes more problems and fails to drop this need to call someone out on being a sympathiser, where their intention is to create peace and talk and negotiate. And in America, neither Clinton or Trump have these visions. Their view is to build walls in Trump's case and drop more bombs in Clinton's. You also have these people speaking of Putin, and how he's our greatest enemy and that kind of thing. And from my point of view, I have listened to that man, and from my point of view, he makes total sense. And he really is trying to bring people together to make sense. He usually uses this common sense, and I've taken the time to listen to these apparently terrible people. I find they've actually got a lot to say, and we would learn from actually listening to them. We've heard about Putin's aversion to gay people and gay rights, but from what I've heard, there's none of that. He believes that all of the rights that these people have, they have a right to be who they are, but he doesn't like the idea of them taking to the streets. There's no need to. If you're being who you are, there's no need to be out with your placards doing that. And that's his opinion. So it does make sense to me, because if you're out there sort of, I do agree with being able to sort of protest, but if there's nothing to protest about, why are we protesting? Don't try and fix what's not broken. We all need to be who we are, and be happy with who we are. One last thing, when people sort of have complained about me saying what I'm saying on my videos and everything, I'm not afraid to say what I think, and I believe and stand up for what's right. So people who talk about me deluding myself, and they've talked about me, the God aspect, where I've talked about spirituality, and I've explained several times that I'm not religious. I simply accept that others have their right to pray and believe in their God and what they believe God how God wants them to pray and worship, and we should leave them to be allowed to do that. I don't think I've talked about a belief in God personally, and I do, however, believe that the energies of the universe are in tune with our own energies and thought processes, and that there is a conscious energy at play. We're all a part of one entity, if you like. And I don't agree with others' belief systems, but I don't condemn those who do or ridicule them. And I think that, people are misguided in their belief of my ideals. People die because of others' version of what other people are thinking. And it's impossible to get a person to stop believing what you think they believe. We need to live and let live, and that's my motto. Allowing people to believe it their way is the only way forward in any peace process, and trying to bomb them into a more westernized view is madness. Stealing their land and taking control is madness. Teaching us that where the good guys is madness. We're not better than anyone. I'm a mum, and we are all different, and I just don't see how people can look at me and say I'm deluded in my views, when largely a lot of people really believe that the way forward is to keep doing what we're doing, but expecting different results, because that to me is complete madness. So why do we provoke them and then kill them for protecting their land and their right to say what they want and their right to pray how they like? So I'd like people to, understand where I'm coming from, and I do believe there's a higher energy out there, probably greater than me, and that's okay too. Call it what you like. Anyway, thanks for listening for now again, and I did make another spiritual video. I call it spiritual because it's more about being conscious. We all need to be more conscious of each other and each other's needs and feelings and emotions, and when we sort of get to understand each other a little bit more, then peace will come. And that's where I stand, and I think I can see that's where Jeremy Corbyn stands too. And another thing that I'd really like to add as well, which I think a large amount of people, if they knew, he has voted in the past for the legalisation of cannabis. He has voted for to be able to use any herbal remedies and things like that in the NHS, and I think that that's a big step forward. I'm not somebody that takes any of this stuff, I don't do cannabis or anything like that myself, but that's something that I would never condemn other people for, and legalisation of that, I see a way forward. It's a good thing. It's a good and positive thing, especially when people need it for health reasons and haven't been able to get that because of the law implications. Anyway, I better go now because I will ramble on forever. Thank you everybody for listening, and I'll talk again another time if you want to listen, of course. Thank you. Love you all. Mwah.